say you want a revolution. Well, everybody wants to change the world. Announcing a love revolution. Where was it born? From the day the human beings and mammals were born, I suppose. Love is an important factor in survival. In a broad sense, everything is about love, because love meets needs, and needs are survival. So, where do we go? Well, a lot of revolutions have been violent ones. Hasn't really gotten us anywhere. Not fundamentally. Things change seemingly, but not fundamentally. Yeah. Real revolution means individual and social growth toward a more just and ethical society. You following me so far? Yep. This is difficult when you're talking to the screen. But what's the path? How do we go about having a love revolution? Well, it's about empathy, and it's about mirroring. Empathy is a kind of mirroring, but so is awareness of feeling, and connection to that. You need to be connected to your feelings because your feelings are about your needs. That way, the flow, the love flow, can happen. So if the needs are expressed and met, that's the love, then you're on the right course. But the world is not perfect, and there's a lot of damaged faith in love. A lot. Our trust is broken pretty much across the world and in every human being. We've tried to patch that up in different ways, and then fought over those different ways that we've tried to comfort ourselves. That didn't fundamentally change anything. Made people feel better for a little while, provided their comforts weren't challenged by a different approach. Anyway, I'm talking about religion. So, what is the answer? Well, it's about empathy and awareness of your needs and feelings, and empathy with those. Is this an inside thing only? No, it's a communication thing. When we're communicating with other people, we need three kinds of empathy. One is creative, the ability to get outside of your box and see things from another point of view. That's very important with empathy. And to see different perspectives, because the world is complex. So, creative empathy, that's important. Seeing things from a variety of perspectives helps us to deliver that love that we need. And the one helps the other, so where there's love, there's better contact with our feelings and needs. And where there's better contact with our feelings and needs, then, it calls out to love. So there's a love flow. This is the revolution. So when you're talking to other people, you need creative empathy. Try to see how they're seeing things, but in process of doing that, you're looking at it, hopefully, from a number of different perspectives, and that's the creative part. And because you don't know, so you've got to be able to be creative, and not stuck in a certain perspective. And you also need compassionate empathy, which makes it safe for people to express their feelings and their needs, to unlearn helplessness around those feelings and needs. Of course, creative empathy also does that. All the empathies do that. That's compassionate empathy. And objective empathy, you get that when you're having a counseling going on. A counselor and a counselee, I suppose. Where there's empathy and the avenue of love, the ability to help, is the objectivity. These three forms of empathy existed before you had empathy, and empathy can be learned. It's a developmental kind of thing. And down below that, you have some basic skills that you're more or less born with to some degree. And that's focus, play, and expression in relationship to your needs and feelings. And the ability to express is vital. And from that, compassion in society evolved, which enables the safety to express those needs and feelings. And the ability to focus on your feelings, well, there's a big rage. It's all the rage now. Mindfulness. Well, you need to be mindful or focused on, develop your focus. Your ability to focus is part of the revolution, of course, but you're born with the ability to focus, to some extent. And that focus is what evolved in social interplay into objectivity, education. So you can't hardly be objective if you can't focus. And so there's a connection there. Focus evolves into objectivity. And play. The ability to play, it's even been seen in fish. The ability to be at play with, how you're feeling and your situation. And that evolves into the ability to create in society, and that's where you have, well, you could create games, football, baseball, ways to channel the play. Yeah, creativity is just an effective way of channeling play. And the ability to be at play with your feelings is important so that they don't overwhelm you. Humor comes from that, the ability to take things lightly, not to, and a lot of times that's born out of making something that's serious ridiculously serious, and to help put it in perspective. And I think humor is often attached to that kind of process, and it's very healthy. So expressions that you might find as you evolve within will be an ability to laugh, an ability to cry, an ability to know what you're feeling, or to be able to focus on it. So that comes out as a kind of silence, attentive silence, which can be observed. Right. So there are brighter minds in the world, and maybe they're going to have a better take on this than I do, but that's my take. And all of this can be focused inside of yourself. You wonder, inner mind communication. I'm talking about communication inside your imagination. And we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we imagine it to be. And, or as we image it to be, or as our senses narrow it down, which is important too. Yeah. So, is that an inner thing entirely? No. Because in communication, you're dealing with the outside world also, hopefully. And so it's an inner and an outer kind of revolution. But when I say inner mind, I'm talking about focusing on that imagination, reflecting on how you image things to be, and applying some objectivity, some creativity, and some compassion. Inwardly directed to oneself. So these empathies create three dialogues. It's between the dramatic self in you and your experience in the world. And this connection between the dramatic self in you and your creative self is kind of like a relationship between yourself and your own self as your higher power. Because that creativity allows you to get a little outside of how you imagine things to be and imagine things differently. So that's kind of power. With creativity, you create experiences. With compassion, you feel them. And with objectivity, you analyze them. So, one of the dialogues is between yourself and your creative self, which I call the artist. Your dramatic self I call the kid, usually. You can put different words here. then there's the communication of your dramatic self with the kid, the more emotional part of you, and your inner counselor. Now, the creative, that's outside of how you imagine things to be, which is your past, present, and future, your timeline. So it's kind of above that, able to watch your whole story and appreciate the whole thing, no matter what, but calling to you, be the hero of love, in the story of your life. So that's the kind of relationship you have there, and when you're dialoguing with the creative, then you're creating experiences. You've ever heard of guided meditations? Well, this is tailored just for you by you. So it has a certain advantage there to some degree, and disadvantages, I suppose. But it's very helpful. Now, back to the objective. Your inner counselor talking to the kid in you. That's mostly, it's not about, the feeling of your feelings. It's talking about your feelings and understanding them and that sort of thing. And so it's really taking you from the present, how you are right now, how you feel things to be, and objectively what that means, and how you proceed and go forward. That part of your timeline. And so basically it's kind of like little you talking to big grown-up objective you. All right, now let's move over to the dialogue between the kid in you, the dramatic self, and the compassionate you. Well, that is what allows you to feel your feelings, and because you're finding a way in which to feel what happened to you. And why is that important? Because there are feelings that are trapped inside of us that we haven't integrated, and they are they're through trauma. And the core hurt of trauma is helplessness. That's why it lingers. The hurt that you have lingers, is that you've learned a kind of helplessness in the trauma in regard to your feelings and your needs. And the disease of neurosis is that you're looking for a symbolic replacement of those things that bring down the anxiety of that moment and to help you survive. You can't live in constant anxiety. So some call that, a kind of pain. Well, it's certainly uncomfortable, and too much anxiety can make you sick or worse. So unlearning that helplessness, that's very key. And we'll go back to the symbolizing of need in a moment. But how do you do having this dialogue? Well, you talk to people you care about or who care about you, and that way you're kind of flipping from being your compassionate self to being your dramatic self. And you're also talking to people who should have cared about you. So there might be a little anger there. And people you should have cared about and were unable to. Maybe because of the hurt inside yourself, or the ignorance that you had, or one of those features we talked about, the lack of creativity. that you had. That didn't help your understanding much. So, yeah, and now let's go to the symbolizing. The symbolic um, twist is not something that people decide to do. It's done automatically by the brain. You are changed to being to things that feel safer and that are more attainable, like more food, perhaps. Um, so it's kind of an addictive sort of thing, the symbolizing. And of course, symbols can't really fill you up, and that's done. I've got enough of that. So that's where people get lost in power and greed. There's never enough power, never enough greed, never enough greed, or well, let's just say money. The power of monetary exchange. These things you can't. There's no limit, and that causes all kinds of problems in society because people just never say enough. The reason they can't say enough is because they're trying to fulfill symbolically needs that were blocked, needs that are actually now a loss and not a reality. But as long as that helplessness is not undone, then you're stuck there. You're stuck in the past. And that dictates your life in many ways. And many believe that it hurts the immune system. There's a lot of evidence for that. Well, now let's go deeper. Let's go to the infant mind, the part of you that you were before you had language. You had no words and no conceptualization. You had no self-concept. A lot of people talk about, ego transcendence or realizing the Buddha's no self. Well, when you were an infant, you didn't have a self-concept. Okay, and tapping into that, gives you that feeling again, and that can help you to be flexible in terms of, changing who you are to something better. More integrated, perhaps. So it's a valuable experience in that way, definitely. And so how do we go into this valuable experience? Well, it's everything in you is about need, and feeling. So there we're going to three things I've mentioned earlier. Focus, play, and expression, but without words. You can make sounds. You may make sounds in this practice, but you don't use anything that's a word. So, focus, of course, that's just focus. Mindfulness, paying attention, and getting in touch with your feelings, but there's still a kind of communication going on there. There's a kind of mirroring back and forth. One thing affects another. So, feedback. When I'm talking about mirroring. I'm talking about basically a feedback loop, which is core to consciousness, by the way, I believe. But anyway, so when you're talking, when you're using play, create sounds. They do it in music. Boop, bop, ba-doo, da, ba-doo, bam, boom. Yeah. You can sing it, you can say it. But you're not having another language. You know, probably. You know, I was speaking in Chinese and didn't know it. You know, well, maybe. The point is, it has no meaning for you verbally, and that can really help stop what the Zen Buddhists call the monkey mind. Because if you're busy creating sounds that have no meaning, and yeah, it's kind of hard for the language you to jump in and start telling you about, gee, you need to go unlock the garage door, things like that. Yeah, and that's the mind will try to do that, try to distract you. Yeah, because integrating who you are, all of the aspects of who you are, that's part of the evolution, the revolution of love. Better integration. You know, that's the love flow. So you want a better integration of needs, and they're being met in the world and inside yourself. All right? But if you're all about inside yourself and not about the world, that's lopsided. It's unreal. And if you're all about changing the world but not yourself, well, then it's the same thing. Yeah, you need to do both, and that's real revolution. And we need to communicate. We need to mirror back and forth. All of our feelings and needs and our abilities to care. You know, so that's how you practice the play aspect and the focus aspect. What about the expression? Well, you're going to express feeling that when there's no words. You basically want to use words that or sounds that again are not words, but which might express feeling. Ah, ooh, similar, sounds to that, can be useful in expressing feeling that you have from a time you had no words. And now I'm going to close this out. I like to end my sessions by saying namaste. Yeah, look it up. It's interesting.